Thanks for showing up on the technology side of our budget workshop. We might as well start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Even though this is not a regular meeting, we do start our workshops that way. So with that said, I'll start it off. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God,
indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Okay. I don't hear our first selectman on, so I don't know if he's on or not. He was having some.
Hey, it's Kurt.
Oh, thank you for joining.
Sorry. I'm only on my phone for right now.
Not a problem. We all know what you look like.
Thank you.
Anyway, what I'd like to do, we have gone through this budget ad nauseum, the different lines, departments, things like that. We've made various changes to various line items, and over the weekend I sent out a couple of different things, just tinkering with some numbers, proposed revenue adjustments, proposed expenditure adjustments. I think everybody was emailed it. Does anybody have any questions on what I sent out regarding just adjustments? They weren't tremendous, because obviously in keeping with the idea of staffing during such a critical time as this virus and the general economy, and we all heard the scenarios from each of the departments, and it's kind of hard to fault what they've been asking for, but yet everybody understands that most won't get what they want. Anybody have any questions on anything on either the revenue side or the appropriation side of the adjustments? Do you like them? You don't like them? What's everybody's thoughts, or anybody's thoughts?
I had no problem with them. I thought they were fine, but I do have some questions on the expenditure side, though.
Okay. Oh, and when you speak up, if you'd give your name, please, so that when this audio goes out and becomes available, whomever would be listening to it will know who's speaking, and especially Monica, who's also tracking this meeting. Well, Paul, go ahead. Why don't you start off?
I just have Paul Wedowitz. I just have some general statements. I don't think it's a good idea for us to consider raising taxes in this time period, even though it's only 0.1 of a mil. Even though we were talking about that, I just think we had to look at keeping it even or even reducing it. Some suggestions I was looking at would be the following: maybe reduce the Board of Education by 0.5% to 1%. Maybe taking $50,000 or something like that from the trees. Maybe eliminating one cruiser from the police department. And I do have an open-ended question. It's my understanding that the floater from Town Hall has resigned. Is that true?
That I'll defer that to Kurt, because I don't have the answer to that.
Oh yeah, the person did resign, and the position will be replaced.
Okay.
So my comments along the line of Paul Wedowitz is: do we have to replace it at this time? I understand we, as the Board of Finance, we have no control over that, but maybe we had to think about not funding that position for the next fiscal year. I look at that as a position that's more wanted versus really needed, given my 20 years in Town Hall, based on what I saw there. That's just a comment.
But I would strongly disagree with that, because we have every department currently running at minimum staffing with only 2 people. So if we have a sickness or any type of incident, we run the risk of not having anyone to staff a department, not being able to take vacation. The person is cross-trained, used in multiple departments. It is the selectman's intention to replace the position.
Okay. And how about taking a look at some of the things that I made a comment on: reducing the Board of Education by 0.5%, maybe take $50,000 out of the tree account,
Well, I think,
Maybe the police department, God, Bill, sorry.
yeah, and this is the chair again.
Yes, sorry.
One of the items that was mailed out today that Doug was kind enough to put together on, one of the things that, in exchanging a couple of text messages and some thoughts, was keeping the mill rate at 36. If you look at the first page of what Doug had sent out this morning, what I had asked him to do was, considering the revenue and the expense adjustments that you all have in your hands that, as I said, I was tinkering with over the weekend, I asked him what it would be to keep the mill rate even at 36, because obviously I could not, I have to believe that off of this COVID mess that we're all in, there are a lot of people suffering in this town with layoffs,
Yep.
furloughs, you pick some kind of bad thing. And income is probably, not secure for quite a number of people. But in that regard, what I asked Doug to do was, I said, in considering the cuts that I proposed, how much would we have to take out of fund balance for next year's budget to keep the mill rate even? And if you look at the first page, it depends how it comes through on your email, but it was the first PDF. The number to keep the tax rate even, keep the cuts in that you all have seen, the fund balance number comes up to $498,000. That is a large number, but quite honestly, I think because of all of what's surrounding us, because as a board and in cooperation with the selectmen, we've managed to keep our town on pretty good financial footing for the last 5 or 6 years. I think to keep the mill rate stable, I would ask you to consider, or I'd like to get your thoughts on making the difference up out of fund balance. This way we don't have anything in terms of cutting expenses further. We don't look at staff layoffs, staff furloughs, whatever you want to call it. And it just keeps things, let's call it a status quo. Is 498 a big number? Sure is. But I think we're in the position, fortunately, that we can do it. I have to believe in what I've read and emails I've seen through my job and everything else, that the way the state of Connecticut in and of itself is also talking about tapping into its rainy day fund or its fund balance, however you want to describe it. And I think we're fortunate to be able to do that, to take the burden off the residents. And if our projections on revenue by some manner turn out to be low, that's okay. That's less we have to tap into. If our estimates on expenses and a possible spending freeze, we end up where we don't spend as much as we think we've budgeted for, that's even better. Mm-hmm. But I think all in all, the least impact to the residents of the town and employees of the town and everybody else is to take the money out of fund balance, use it in this budget year, be mindful of what we spend and what we take in, and hopefully this virus goes away and we can return back to normal operations.
Bill, Paul, Wedowitz again, what's the potential long-term effect of dipping into the fund, as you just said, long-term?
It's a year by year. For example, I'll give you an example. If we adopt the budget as it is, and we go through the year, and budgets are always at break even. The revenues equal the expenses. Essentially using fund balance, we're essentially budgeting at a deficit, saying that we'll have more expenditures than revenue, which is means you dip into your rainy day fund, your fund balance, whatever you want to call it. But if you control your expenditures and your revenues get in an uptick, then maybe you don't dip in as far as you need to. So that 498, maybe that turns to only 300 or 250 or whatever, some number less than that. And it's a building process every year. Then you go about managing your activity like we've done in the past. We're pretty good at managing expenditures, and we're pretty good at managing our revenues. I don't think this town spends money foolishly. I think this board would not allow it to spend money foolishly, to be honest with you, which is a good thing. And I think it's a matter of, it's like if you take money out of your own savings account, you look to put it back in a little bit at a time. Most people can't replace everything that they've taken in one shot, one time. People don't make that kind of money. But I think given what's going,
go ahead, Paul Witters, and if we keep it even, that's acceptable to me. I just couldn't see an increase. That bothered me.
Yeah, I mean, budgets are at best an estimate, and we try our best. We, as a board, I think we've done a pretty good job of putting stuff together, and the taxpayers have gone along with us, thankfully, over the last few years. But I think our main concern with this virus, pandemic, whatever you want to call it, I think has to be the residents of the town, and not to put any more of a burden on them than we have to. And I think by keeping the mill rate even, which will be, I think, the 5th year in a row or 6th year in a row that we'll be doing that, I think we've been fortunate enough to build up enough reserve for a rainy day. And if a pandemic's not a rainy day, I don't know what is.
I agree. Richard Demko here. So the version that sent out this morning, this was run at a 98.6% collection rate?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think Dana does a good job. And again, that's a best estimate. She's been consistent over the last however many years. And we didn't fiddle with the tax collection rate. We just looked at it and said, okay, we've got some cuts in revenues and expenses. What do we need to take as much of a worry or a burden off a taxpayer as we can?
Okay.
And still provide services to the town, obviously.
All right, and the 98.6% collection rate, you would say that that's the highest that you would feel comfortable estimating?
Yeah, I think at this point, I don't think going to 98.9, 99.2, pick a percentage. No town ever gets all of it. It just doesn't happen. But we've been fortunate, and I think we have enough confidence in Dana and as well as the residents that they'll meet those obligations and not putting any more of a burden on them than they've had in the past. And hopefully we get it. If it's a dramatic drop off and people just can't pay their taxes, well, there are other provisions if things go wrong that may involve issuing tax anticipation notes or something like that, but that's down the road. Right now, I think we have to look at it as it's 36 mills. It's been that way for the past 5 years. We're not putting any additional burden on the taxpayer. The additional thought of having it 36.1 or 0.2 or whatever the numbers were in the beginning, the pandemic has effectively, at least in my mind and hopefully in yours, has canceled that out.
Yeah, absolutely. But see, now let me ask this. If we were to go with like a 99% collection rate and lower the amount of the fund balance you used, let's say we get to that plateau throughout the process where it looks like we're coming up short on the collection rate, at that point, would we be able to transfer from the fund balance to make up the shortfall if we didn't hit that 99% collection rate?
it would, if depending upon the size of the money involved, I believe it could get into the referendum area.
Because you think it'll be
And-
more than 500,000 that we would need to draw? Because I mean, if we're only using 498 now,
Yep.
whatever,
Yeah.
That's below the referendum threshold. So even if we were
The referendum threshold concerning transfers, I believe, is $50,000.
I thought that was like around 500,000.
No. That's why. That's why we've periodically it's been tried to be raised, but it hasn't met success with the voters. So, and we've never had in the history of the town that I know of had to go back and say, "Gee, we're low. We got to take another whatever it is, 100,000, 200, whatever it is." That's never been the case, and quite honestly, to bump the percentages up, a tenth of a percent bump in a percentage in the collection rate is, I think, only $30-something thousand.
30,000 or something, right?
Yeah, and it's not, quite honestly, it's not worth tinkering with, because you hit 60 and you've crossed that threshold. I think it's a safe harbor. Plus, we have the value of looking forward. I mean, when this gets adopted, if it's adopted in its present form, we're going to be controlling expenses. I think a spending freeze would be a wise thing to do coming out of the gate, depending upon what the economic environment is, and also carefully monitoring all of the revenue and seeing where this takes us, because taking this money out isn't being done to build an artificially low mill rate. It's being done in recognition of the economic environment, what's going on in the town, because
exactly,
of this
to
pandemic.
lower the burden on the taxpayer. I mean,
Yeah.
So now my next question, Richard Demko again, is I sent you an email a couple weeks ago in regards to the health insurance, the new health insurance quote.
Oh, yeah, yep.
Okay, so now is that the final quote that we received, or is this still in negotiation?
I believe it's final. I'll turn that piece to Kurt, who's involved in it day to day.
Well, just a couple pieces of clarification. A referendum is any type of notes, bonds, or borrowing over 500,000, except tax anticipation notes or TANs. So that would trigger a referendum. Anything over 100,000 requires a town meeting. So Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance. We don't have to go to referendum.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, just to clarify that. And then with regards to that, the 13.5 is the number we actually locked in at. Our loss ratio is atrocious. Our initial renewal with Cigna was over 30%. Right now we're running about an $800,000 deficit. So to get 13.5% is an actual miracle. So we switched back to Anthem, and they provided us that quote. But we looked at fully insured, we looked at self-insured, we looked at going to the Connecticut partnership. We kicked just about every rock over the last 4 months or so.
Okay.
But we are locked in now with Anthem at 13.5%.
Okay, that was pretty much what I just wanted to know, was that the lock-in price, that we were quoted. So it's not going to go up.
No, we're there.
Essentially, so we're there. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
That's all I have. I mean, other than that, looking through this, I think, I feel the same in a sense where, during this economic difficulties about the pandemic, I think that we should have the lowest burden that we possibly can have on the taxpayers without sacrificing the amount of services that we provide. So I mean, using the fund balance to kind of, make up the difference, I think I'm all right with considering this economic time. I mean, if this was anything else, I mean, I definitely would not be comfortable drawing that much out of the fund balance, but I mean, because it is what it is. And I think that the use of it is warranted because, as you said, this is kind of a rainy day, you know.
Yeah,
so
I mean,
might as well
and I
use
don't
it
think
for what it's there for.
I don't think anybody on the board would disagree with that. I mean, if we were just going to grab fund balance for the sake of grabbing fund balance and being able to spend it on pet projects and this and that, that would be anything but sound management, and that's not the case with this thing. Anybody else, Bev or Jim or John, Kwame, anybody have any other thoughts on this, what we're looking at?
This is John. I just had one comment on the collection rate going up to 99. I think even in a good year, that's going to be something that is nice to strive to, but I don't think it's as realistic, especially now in this year. I think it's going to be even less realistic to try for a 99.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I would tend to agree with that also, John. If we go past it, hooray, it's a win. If we
Right.
have to get there, then that could be an issue. And I think we've done okay for 4 or 5 years now at that percentage. So, you know, I think it's
And that's in a
best
good year.
to stay there.
You know,
Yeah,
relative
and
good
that's correct. Anybody else?
Beth Kennedy, I just had one question. We have
Sure.
a department for the Economic Development Department, and we haven't had anybody in that department for the last couple of years. Should we continue to fund that?
I will again turn that over to our first selectman.
For a good part of 2019, we actually had a contract with CERC to provide a person for Seymour. They put in about 15 hours a week. It was a consultant with great results. Is my understanding that the Economic Development Commission has made a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen for our meeting on next Tuesday with how to move forward with that position. So my understanding is they want to hire a specific consultant, and they want me to enter into negotiations with that person. But I need to bring that to the board first and have them authorize me to do so.
Okay. And then I had one other question. We have a hiring freeze on now?
No. We have a spending freeze.
A spending freeze, but not a hiring freeze. Okay, thank you.
We have no need to hire. We're what we consider fully staffed, with the exception of the floater who left, but she left right before everything kind of went crazy. So we just haven't had a chance to be able to post or interview or anything like that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Jim, Kwame, anyone else?
This
Hey,
is
Bill?
Jim. I agree with you, Bill. I agree with your idea.
Okay.
So it makes sense to do that.
Okay, thank you.
It's Kwame. I've got nothing to
yep.
add, Bill.
All right, no, that's fine. Thank you.
Hey, Bill?
Is there? Yeah, go ahead.
Paul
Yeah,
Wedowitz.
go
I
ahead,
have a
Paul.
question for Kurt. Is the issue with the health insurance a temporary situation? Is there any thoughts that this might drop over time? Is there anything proactive we could do about it?
No, unfortunately, we've just had a heavy amount of usage. Obviously, with HIPAA restrictions and things, I can't get into specifics, but
Okay.
our loss ratio for the last 2+ years has been very high.
And the health,
But
insurance.
but no. Well, let's say, Paul, just to build off that, even if we had some of the proactive stuff, which we're starting to add now, these are things that really wouldn't affect that too much. You know, a lot of these are the big ticket expenses, unfortunately, for people.
Okay.
And then, Bill, if
Yeah,
I could, I'd like to weigh into on the fund balance.
Go ahead. Please do.
I think if we put $500,000 in fund balance, I believe the rating agency is going to have a huge issue with that.
Okay.
They're constantly checking Connecticut credits. They just reduced Shelton two levels. Now, Shelton took their fund balance down to $12,000. That was intentional.
Yeah.
But the rating agency obviously still frowns upon that. What I would recommend, and I think, Bill, the philosophical approach that you're taking is correct, but instead of using fund balance, I would then use some of the revenue lines and increase those things like prior year taxes, supplemental tax, stuff like that, that if we don't hit, it's not that big a deal, because at the end of the year, everything will wash out. I think just putting that 500,000 in, I think is going to put a red flag up to the rating agencies. But if we get to the end of fiscal year 21 and we have to at that point move some money out of fund balance, I think it'll be looked at a lot more favorably from the rating agencies based on the economy, the virus, the impacts, things like that. So I think that would be a better way of handling it than just moving the money or just putting it out there that we're going to use $500,000 of fund balance.
Okay.
I'm not sure the selectmen would go for that either.
Okay.
To be honest, again,
yeah.
they're not finance people like you guys. They're going to look at the optics of, well, taking $500,000 out of fund balance. Have we spent the last 9 years building up our fund balance?
True.
So I think it's going to scare them. So I think it's better if we just, if it's an additional 250,000, we add $250,000 in some of the conservative revenue numbers that we put out. And if we don't hit them, that's something that we can track throughout the year, and we can work to try to control the expenses like we do every year. As you know, we always have less expenses and more revenue each year, it seems. So I think we can go through and clean up. But if we get to the end of 2021, we'd have a good understanding where we are. We can at that point move whatever's needed to balance the budget out of fund balance.
And that was my question from Betty Ann, where the concern was keeping it status quo, sets off the alarms, and without increasing or decreasing the mill rate, keeping it status quo dramatically. So that was a question from way back when, and a warning sign that had been discussed earlier. So that would be my only concern.
Okay.
Hey, Bill.
Yeah.
This is Doug.
Yeah, Doug.
One that you possibly could do too is that grant from the high school. It's actually, as Rick said, it was one of the low numbers. You could probably bump that up to 400,000 or 500,000 if you want. I don't know if it'll come in.
On the capital,
300,000.
On the capital project reimbursement.
Do we
have anything, have we heard anything on that? I know that hasn't been a hot topic because it's just kind of there, but have we heard anything on that at all?
Sherry's working, this is Doug.
Yeah.
Sherry's working on it, and she's got a person that does these things for a living, and he's in the queue to come down and work on that with her.
Okay. That's fine. All right. Well, I think in that regard then, and I understand the feelings. I understand the feelings of the selectmen could come through, and it's balanced off against trying to keep the mill rate stable for the taxpayers and keep the rating agencies happy. So we've got like three balls we're juggling in the air here, folks. Maybe, you're right. I've heard that the 300 may be a low number to begin with. Is there any issue then if we add 150 to the 300 and take the 150 out of fund balance that we were planning on using? So that would bring our fund balance usage down to 348. And then in terms of let's call it prior year property taxes, which doesn't affect obviously the current mill rate, we go to, let's say up another 75. So effectively we end up with, if my math skills are any good, and I'm hoping they are, we come out with using fund balance of 273,815. And prior year taxes becomes 680. And the reimbursement becomes 450.
Yeah, I'm all right with that, Richard Demko. I mean, even just to take it another step further, and I'm going to go back once again to the collection rate.
Okay.
What are we looking at historically for a collection rate? What are we usually doing with that?
In past
I mean,
years,
our
we
actual
have,
number. Like, what have we hit?
I don't remember offhand, I mean, all of the percentages. Doug, would you happen to remember? I know it comes off the audit report. I mean, you just do the division, but.
I believe last year we hit about 98.5. And then last time I talked to Dana, she said that looks like we're going to hit right around 98.4.
Okay, so we're in the ballpark. If not a 30 grand high or something like that.
Okay.
On the estimate. And to John's point that he brought up before, I would hesitate if people are having a stretch on this to want to estimate anything higher for the sake of, you know, $30,000, let's call it, or 35, whatever that is.
All right.
So
So now, where do you think the red flag cutoff on the fund balance usage would be? Like somewhere around 200,000?
I would hope not that low. Kurt, you talk more to the rating people than anyone else. Can they live with roughly 275?
I think if we stay in that 225 to 250 range,
Okay.
because that's historically where we've been the last few years, because we can tie that back to contingency and some other things. As long as it's, what they don't like is if fund balance is used, Bill, as you said before, just to plug a number in.
Oh,
so
absolutely.
Taxes don't move. If contingency is tied, if fund balance use is tied to contingency, if it's tied to one-time purchases, some type of capital expense, then that's generally justifiable. So when we sit in front of them, we could say, well, yeah, we used 500,000, like last year in fiscal year 19, when we bought the fire truck. You know, we could talk about, yeah, we used $500,000 in fund balance, but we purchased a fire truck, needed a piece of apparatus. They have no issue with that. So I think if we stay in that 225 to 250 range with the fund balance, I think it's very justifiable in building the regular budget. Now, if you needed to say, hey, we wanted to throw an extra 25,000 in because of, we wanted to build a cushion in because of the coronavirus, I think those are talking points that, you know, Doug and I could use the next time we sit down with them that I think they would be comfortable with. But I really wouldn't get too high.
Okay. All right. Then let's do this then, which also will make sense.
Bill, let me.
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to clarify one thing, because just had a conversation with Chris Pelosi today. He was working with our brokers.
Yep.
Doug, you may not even know this yet. We're going to switch our dental plan from self-insured to a fully funded plan.
Okay.
By doing so, we're going to save essentially 2% on our health insurance. So the total savings is about $120,000. We split between us and the Board of Education. So I just did some quick guerrilla math. 2% saves us about $47,000. So, I think we can probably readjust the health insurance line and pick up close to 50,000 right there. So I
Okay.
think you could probably keep fund balance at that 225 or 250 and still have a little bit of wiggle room.
Yeah. Hey, Doug,
Yeah.
in that
Yeah.
sense, why don't you then adjust the health insurance line?
Yeah.
Let's call it, make it $40,000.
Okay.
And obviously that'll drop it down a little bit. And then we see where we are.
Okay.
So
Also make those revenue adjustments too.
Yeah, I would make the revenue adjustments. I would add on to the, I would add the 150 to the capital reimbursement. I would add 75 onto the prior year property taxes. So that's 2.25. So we've got 2.25. And
Take
let me
45
look
off
down
of health insurance.
and let me look back at my scratch pad and take 45 off of health insurance. And whatever the resulting fund balance I come up with is roughly 228,815. Now I may be off a little bit here or there on my math.
So I have another suggestion after looking through
Go ahead.
the general property tax line here. Because now if we're looking at the actual 2018 to 2019 actuals for
Sure.
the supplemental car tax, we brought in
Mhm.
550,000 about. So we're actually only budgeting this year 475. And it seems historically what we've been doing has been no less than 500,000. So I would like to suggest maybe bumping up the supplemental car tax from 475 to 500, considering that every year we have made the 500,000 mark and above on the actuals.
Okay. Any other thoughts on that? If that being that the case, if we bump supplemental to 500, then only bump prior year taxes 50. So you'll come out with
Well,
650.
Let's say, Bill, this is Kurt again. I think Rich I think he's on point. I think that's one of the lines that we're a little bit more conservative with when Doug and I were
Okay.
putting the revenues numbers together.
Okay.
I would hesitate a little bit with everything going on. Supplementals generally, obviously, new cars that are purchased, kind of that catch-up tax type thing. I don't know how much we're going to hit of that number. So if you're using that along the lines of a place to put a number in, understanding that we're probably going to have to backfill a little bit with fund balance, I think that's perfectly okay. And again, I would, if you want to beef these revenue numbers up, I'm okay. I would in turn just keep bringing that use of fund balance down.
Oh no, absolutely.
And then
That's the whole point.
give our professional staff the opportunity to try to work to actually make this budget work and not have to use as much fund balance if we don't have to.
Oh, not an issue. As I said, if we bump up supplemental by 25 and we bump up prior year by 50, plus look at the 150 on the reimbursement, we're at 273, and then take out the 45 on health insurance, we come down to a use of fund balance of 228.
To me, that seems a little
Yes,
more reasonable.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, as I said, we're looking to backfill numbers and all, and obviously the rating agencies do have a bearing on this, but I don't think we're so off the mark in any of our projections that we would have an issue with this, and we could be pleasantly surprised with the reimbursement and have it come in even higher. I mean, that's something we won't know until the numbers are all put together, obviously. So
I think plus, I was going to say this Kurt again, plus knowing which numbers are a little higher, estimated a little bit higher,
Yep.
You know, it gives Doug, Tony, Rory, myself the opportunity to kind of dig in on those numbers starting right on July 1st,
Oh, absolutely.
staying on top of them and
No.
making sure, you know, and just making the tweaks that we need to, at least bringing the recommendations to you guys that we need throughout the year, as opposed to waiting right up to May or June and trying to correct it. We'll know, like we did a couple of years ago, we were going to have a problem in December.
Yep.
So we could start preparing for that.
No, agreed.
Mhm.
I think all of that said, Doug, if you can make the changes we just talked about and send out reprints in the morning to everybody.
Okay.
You know, the first page, and obviously then the whole detail of the revenue, detail of the expenses, so everybody can take a look at it again.
Okay.
That would be a good thing. I think that being said, we want to reconvene to, let's say, get a consensus on what the final numbers should look like. And obviously before, because the Board of Selectmen are meeting, what, next Tuesday, Kurt?
Next Tuesday, yes.
Yeah, and they're going to be discussing the governor's executive orders and involving the Board of Finance, Board of Selectmen, budget process and stuff. I think it's probably a wise thing that, Doug, if you can circulate this material, and next Tuesday is the 21st. If we could get together on another Zoom conference next Wednesday, which would be the 22nd, then we will know what the Board of Selectmen decided at their meeting. We'll have the latest and greatest numbers that Doug's going to provide for us tomorrow. And all things considered, we can move forward with that, because our regular meeting is the 28th, which is 2 weeks from tonight, obviously. And traditionally, what we've done, we've come to a consensus at the last workshop on what the budget is going to look like and agree on, and then we take the formal vote for that budget at what would be our next meeting. In this case, it would be April 28th. Anyone have any thoughts on anything different, or any timing suggestions other than what I've just said?
Hey, Bill, Paul Wedowitz? Bill?
Yeah.
Paul Wedowitz?
Yep.
How much money will we estimate, or can we even think about, less we may get from the state due to their financial situation, supporting the Board of Ed?
My understanding is the grants are targeted to remain the same as we've budgeted them.
Oh, okay.
And I think that's going to be from everything I've seen, and Kurt, correct me if I'm wrong, but everything I have seen from the different emails and articles that I've come across, that they're targeting the funding at the same level, let's call it, what we have in here for numbers. Now, it could be if it was a couple of $1,000 off here or there, maybe, but for now, it's hopefully status quo.
Yeah, this is Kurt again. One of the things the governor had said when, in his executive order, he required towns and cities to continue to pay their entire Board of Education staff. That was a caveat of the ECS payments remaining fully intact. So that was the trade-off. The state was saying, if we're going to continue to invest the ECS dollars into the towns and cities, we need to make sure that staff is there when the kids come back to school, whether that's in May, June, or next September. So that's the trade-off. So we fully expect state funding to remain as projected.
And the last ECS check, if I'm right, comes in next month, and then you go towards the new cycle for the new year. Anyone else have anything? Okay, so the plan of attack is Doug will put the numbers together. The mill rate will stay at 36. Our fund balance usage will be approximately 228 and some change. we've adjusted the reimbursement number, the supplemental number, and the prior year property tax number, as well as we've adjusted downward the health insurance for the dental of $45,000. All that said, then look through what Doug sends out, and we will reconvene at 7 o'clock on the 22nd, which is a week from tomorrow. Anybody have anything else?
So there would be no Thursday meeting then?
No, we
John?
will. No meeting. No meetings the rest of this week.
Okay.
Wow, thank you.
Thank
Cool.
you.
Bill, it's Kirk, and I had a couple more things.
Yeah, no, certainly. Go ahead.
Just while we have the whole board together. Two of the things that the board of selectmen will be talking about next Tuesday. Number one will be the budget process itself, how that would work. And then the other thing is going to be with regard to the deferment of tax payments. The governor's executive order has given towns and cities the ability to allow residents to defer payments up to 90 days. So that's a conversation that's going to be had by the selectmen. There's two ways you could do it. One is you could just allow everyone to do that with the exception of people who pay their taxes by escrow. Or two, it could be based on a criteria that's determined by the state. People would have to fill out an application, submit that application, and assuming they are accepted, then they could defer their taxes up to 90 days. So we are in conversations now about potentially getting a resolution passed to allow us to get up to $4 million in TANs, or tax anticipation notes. That way, if we were to move forward with this deferment and we started to run into cash flow issues, we would have the ability to go out and get that money. We would do it more than likely through a private placement with a bank. So we would have that lined up in advance. So if the need arose, we would be able to have that money very quickly. So that's just kind of an update of what the selectmen will be talking about. On Wednesday, when I'll come back to that meeting as well, and I'll go through what the selectmen decided to give you an update and to let you then make your decisions. If I understand kind of the back and forth between myself and Bill and Rich Paterno, our attorney, there's going to be your meeting to vote on the budget. Then you'll need to hold a public hearing where residents will be allowed to weigh in on the budget. And then you'll meet the third time when we'll actually vote on the budget. But we'll have all of that for you at your meeting on Wednesday, so you'll have an understanding of the expectations that your board will have. But there will be no, assuming this all passes, there will be no referendum. You will be the final decision makers on the fiscal year 21 budget. The seven elected members.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I mean, this is the chair again. This virus has thrown everything and everybody for a loop. And I come back to what I said at the start of this thing. Through our efforts and the Board of Selectmen's efforts and the Finance Department and even the Board of Education efforts to look at money and watch things and be conscious of spending, we are, I think, in better shape than a lot of towns and maybe even a lot of states that just don't have resources to fall back on. Not that anyone wants to use them, but if there's a time that you need to do it, this may be it. All that said, if there are no other comments or things like that, we will get the materials from Doug tomorrow, and we will reconvene back here, and Rory will set it up, I'm assuming, on the 22nd, a week from tomorrow.
22nd?
The 22nd, that's a week from, that'll be a week from tomorrow. So if no one has anything else, then thanks everybody for calling in or filing in, and that'd be it. See,
Cool.
stay safe and wash your hands. Thank you.
Okay.
Love you all. Thank you, Kurt.
Have a good evening.
Take care. Thank you.
Take
Good
care.
night, everybody.
Bye-bye.